Ladies and gentlemen, before the start of deliberations on today's topic, let me have the privilege as the president of Nissmat to introduce this international institution. Established in 1990, it has now become a think tank organization with association of more than 90 experts and scholars on various subjects who provide inputs to us. Our forum has conducted a number of webinars and interactive sessions which have received massive response. I am sure our session today would be of great interest to you all. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to have a dialogue on the subject of Hamas-Israel conflict and to provide a cryptic history and background of it. The two persons who are involved in the dialogue are me. I am C. Paul Singh, President of Nissmat, and Major General Retired Deepak Mehta, who is the Director of Nissmat. I think we should commence the dialogue now, giving a brief background. From time to time, where needed, I will also intervene, General. General, you may start with the preface to it as to how do you look at it, what is the entire background to it.
Thank you, sir. Sir, this Israeli-Palestine conflict is an ongoing political conflict in the Levant. Levant is the eastern flank or the eastern shore of the Mediterranean, which now holds both Israel and the Gaza Strip. Now, this political conflict started somewhere in the 19th century. And this is the longest ongoing political conflict, which is off and on both political and military connotations. In 1897, the first Zionist Congress came into being. And it was a public declaration by the Jews to have a homeland in wherever it was. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration was signed or announced by the British to create a homeland for the Jews. This resulted in intense tension in the region as the Jews started immigrating in large numbers and with the headquarters at Jerusalem. This political event resulted in large-scale violence against the Jews. The riots continued, but the major riots came up in 1921-22 and also 1929, resulting in large-scale loss of lives on both sides, the Palestinians and the Israelis. In 1948, the Jew state was established. The Arab League decided to intervene against the creation of the Israeli, leading to the first war in 1948. This again resulted in clashes and loss of human lives on both sides. Ultimately, in 1949, a ceasefire was brought through the Armistice Agreement.
So, General, I'll just take on from Armistice Agreement onward. Now, in that agreement, as far as I recollect, it was decided that Israel would continue to hold most of the mandated territory.
Correct, sir.
As far as Jordan is concerned, it has occupied and annexed the West Bank, and it was decided that the West Bank will continue to be under the command of the Jordan. After that, the Gaza Strip, which was taken over by the Egypt, was decided to be kept under Egypt. So the three parties came in between. That is Israel, who will continue to have the mandated territory. That is Jordan, which will have the West Bank, and Egypt, which will have the Gaza Strip. But in 1967, somewhere, again, a major war, which is called 6 Days War, that took place, that broke out between Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. The Israel gained control of the West Bank from Jordan, as well as the Gaza Strip from Egypt. However, meanwhile, a party was created by Yasser Arafat in 1959, known as Al Fatah, and the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization. It was established with the aim to liberate areas of Palestine which were under the control of Israel. A number of conflicts started happening between Israel and the Palestinian under Arafat. These conflicts occurred during the period of Yasser Arafat and militant groups, as well as the Israeli forces entangled with each other and lost a lot of life, human life, and sufferings were inflicted. Then the famous liberation you are referred to, famous liberation of hostages from the Entebbe airport in Uganda also took place during this period. You remember that Uganda caught some Jewish hostages from a plane and kept them in the airport. And Arafat was very keen that it will be a good sort of hostages with us, which will be able to negotiate on our terms with Israel. However, the Israel commando forces and the Israeli Air Force managed a unique operation. They went at the edge that Entebbe airport had a little bit inclined. It was a little side high, a little side lower. So they went on the lower side, while the higher side the airport was equipped. They all landed there. En route, they had plans to get fuel for their two. They were all secret. Nobody knew. So they landed up in the night and they smashed into the airport, the commandos, and released most of the hostages, except 2 or 3 hostages, and put them into their planes and brought them back to Israel. I mean, this is considered one of the major operations.
And intervene here, it's the present Prime Minister Netanyahu's brother who led that attack in Entebbe, sir.
So you see, the Israel army, as well as Israel Air Force, as well as Israel Defense Forces as such, are considered today one of the finest forces, it was termed, because they could bring the hostages from the enemy territory, so-called enemy territory, and liberate them. About all their hostages, except 1 or 2 were injured and 1 or 2 were killed. And they smashed all the people, all those PLO people who had kept them hostage. They were firing, etc., but nothing happened to them except 1 or 2. So it was a unique operation during that time. And then subsequently, in 1990, somewhere, the Oslo Accord was signed. This Oslo Accord was between Yasser Arafat and Rabin, who was then the Prime Minister of Israel, and it was said that now again peace should be restored to this area, this conflict-ridden area. What I am trying to emphasize is, right from the time you have started till I am telling you in 1990, again Oslo Agreement, again the peace was brought about, and they decided that we have to now live in peace.
Correct, sir. Sir, I'll continue hereafter. You see, after the 6-day war in the Gaza Strip, both the Palestinians and the Israelis were staying together. Because Gaza Strip had, as you had mentioned, Gaza Strip was annexed or captured, was taken over by the Israelis from the Egyptian forces. But the animosity between the two groups carried on, and there were a large number of violence within the Gaza Strip. But in 2006, the Prime Minister of Palestine, he took a decision to pull back all the settlers and the military personnel from the Gaza Strip. And that's the time Hamas came into being. Hamas was that time a political group. And they had the support of the population. Subsequently, Hamas became a militant. Hamas became two groups.
You know what we are trying to reach is that these conflicts have been going on for years now between the so-called Palestinian in one form or the other and the Jews in one form or the other. Now, as you mentioned, that when at the control of the Gaza Strip, which came under the National Party at that time, which was called the Gaza Nationalist Party, but it was Hamas. Hamas was a nationalist party, as you said.
Correct, sir.
Subsequently, they went into operation and they become radical elements and they become jihadi elements. Now, the status which came to being after this being was that Palestinian stands divided into two parts, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. As far as the West Bank is concerned, this came under the Palestinian, as well as the Gaza Strip is concerned, this came under the Hamas. Now, after that, it was recognized by the UN also that Palestinian is there. They recognize, UN also recognized Palestine, and about
Correct.
139 and 140 countries, they, including India, recognize Palestine as a country. But the most unfortunate part was that the West Bank, this came under the Palestinian Authority, no doubt, but the leader, Mahmoud Abbas, was of radical views there also. And on this side, the Gaza Strip, though came under Hamas, which was a nationalist group, but when it, after voting and all this nationalist group, they took over control and they started getting totally radicalized. The interesting thing is that since 2006, when Israel pulled out from Gaza Strip, at that time, Israel still continued to give facilities like hospitals, schools, education, other educational facilities. Further, Israel also controlled the airspace, territorial waters, travel corridors, etc., of Gaza Strip. So virtually, though there was a Hamas as a sort of nationalist and terrorist group, still this was indirectly being facilitated and supported by Israel in the form of these facilities which were being given. However, so as to create a conflict, this was the idea was why Israel continued to support Hamas in terms of this facility. The idea was that somehow or the other create a rift and conflict between the Palestine and Hamas groups. This was the idea that one side is the Palestinian West Bank, this is Hamas, so create a conflict and weaken the Palestinian cause.
Yes, sir. May I intervene here? Because the world body, the UN, was only dealing with Mohammed Abbas, which is the West Bank. And as far as the Gaza Strip was concerned, there was no one to get in touch with them except for the Israelis. So that was a drift, what you brought up, that there was a sort of a rift between the two, which came into being, sir.
The entire population of Gaza, which is approximately 2.2 million, is suffering due to this war at present. Although this Hamas, the same Hamas was at one time facilitated by Israel. Then there is a sort of contention about also, because in Jerusalem you have got two sacred places of worship. One is Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the second is the Temple Mount being sacred for the Jews. How do you reflect on that? What do you think? What happened? A major war started, and why these two places? What is your view on these two holy places being at same place, Jerusalem, resulting in conflicts here and there?
So you had brought out a very valid point with regards to the two religious places in Jerusalem. As for the Palestinians are concerned, they feel this is the core issue. You see, in Israel, there are about 6% of the Palestinians who are staying there. They have been going to the mosque Al-Aqsa Mosque. But they're under the control of the Israeli Defense Forces. But the people from the West Bank and Ramallah, they cannot go to this mosque because they've made a protective, the Israelis made a protective wall. So this is a basic contention. What you brought out was these two temples or religious places in Jerusalem. And as far as this operation, which is conducted on the 7th by the Hamas, I think it was a very well planned and executed operation by the Hamas. There are two things to be kept in mind here, sir. You see, Hamas has got two groups, the political group and the militant group. The political group is in Qatar, and the militant group is in Gaza Strip. When the talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia were taking place, the political group of Hamas had also gone to Saudi Arabia. And that's the time the militant group, they said now's the time to take the action. Though, of course, there may be many more reasons for it. One of the reasons what they talk of is that the Hamas group in Gaza Strip, they feel they're being strangled. Because as you brought out, the complete control of the Gaza Strip still rests with Israel. They wanted to break the stranglehold. So what was done on the 7th was they had planned this operation in detail. They had they had carried on exercises. They had placed the major earth-moving equipment closer to the walls, to the fence. They infiltrated the habitation of Israel and did massive chaos. They massacred people. About 1,400 people died in that area. This led to the retaliation by the Israelis. They started with the air attacks, and they were targeting the Hamas bases. And also, now they started the ground offensive. Israelis feel that the core group of the Hamas is in North Gaza Strip. Now, as of yesterday, they have encircled North Gaza. Apparently, they're going to subsequently come on to the center and the south. But this war has caused massive destruction, both sides, more towards Gaza Strip because of the air attacks, and massive humanitarian crisis because large number of people. Sir.
General, I'd like to interrupt you. You know, this 7th October, the retaliation started itself in the evening, whatever you say.
Yes, sir.
We'll discuss further as to how they could come. I mean, despite the fact that your Israel forces are considered to be top-class forces, yet they were taken unaware. And the terrorist group will come. We can talk it subsequently, but this is a very interesting feature that the top-class force of the Israel, they could not know as to Hamas terrorists are going to attack. So there is some point where the Israeli forces have been caught napping or sleeping. And that is why this occurred. Occurred is all right. It should not have occurred. We condemn this thing. But Israel retaliation with airstrikes, then ground operation, massive destruction of property, massive loss to human lives, and all this, it doesn't go with today's environment in the world. I mean, you can do something as a retaliation. The revenge is there, but the revenge should not lead to heavy destruction, heavy casualties like this, because ultimately, what's the aim? What's the aim? I mean, at the end of it, ultimately, if the aim is only to get the hostages released, even then it is dangerous, because tomorrow, if they are being attacked, bombing is going on, in Gaza Strip, the Hamas will retaliate. They will even kill the hostages. I think this is not even in their interest to continue with the war. Therefore, the UN resolution which was brought about, I think that was in good sense to create ceasefire. Somehow the UN resolution failed. It was brought it was brought into sort of a narrative was given by Jordan, and number of countries supported it, but number of countries abstained, and it could not go through. And therefore, I mean, as far as we are concerned, I think the UN resolution should have gone through somehow or the other for humanitarian reason. And let us try to list out very briefly what are our recommendations or our views, I would call it, not recommendation, our views to end this human crisis in Gaza.
Sir, firstly, this action of the Hamas on 7 October was uncalled for. They have done it to gain power because Mahmoud Abbas in West Bank apparently is losing his stand with the population in the West Bank. Hamas wanted to become a major power. Hamas, as far as the universities are concerned, bulk of the students of the university in West Bank have opted for Hamas. My recommendation is that Israel is very clear. They said, we will stop the war provided the hostages are released. But there's a catch to it. There are about 6,000 Palestinians who are in the jails of Israel against 224 Israeli hostages there. How can they match up the two figures? It's a million-dollar question. Yeah. Now, I feel that the ceasefire will only take place once these hostages are pulled back, sir. Then, of course...
Sir, I tend to agree with you on the first part. I don't think the idea is to release the hostages. Let me tell you, as you yourself said, 6,000 the people, Palestinians, are under the jails of Israel, various places. 6, and there are 200 odd hostages. If they could execute 200 hostages, they could execute 6,000 of these people. So this is only a catch. And I go further, sir. I go further that even the Western part, I mean, lo and behold, that the UNO president comes here, he gives all the support, everything to Israel, and at the same time he says, so long the hostages are not released. Look at it. You want to release the hostages, sir, and you send them all arsenal, all money, whatever possible resources are there, they are giving to the Israel forces, which means it is only a catch, but this is just question of hostage is an issue, which they have just brought it to the world. But actually it is not that. It actually is that I would just like to bring about a recent study by one of the very famous author. He has been awarded a number of times in various literary functions. He belongs to America. He's a black African who is staying there in America. He said that he visited recently, about 8 days back or 10 days back, he visited Gaza as well as he visited Israel. He says that everywhere, the feeling which is being conveyed to the people of Israel is that this is our cleaning operation, that we want to cleanse totally the Palestinians from this area. They should go back to Egypt. The idea behind this is what is there, he said. And
but it's a wrong idea, sir, because the locals, the Palestinians, were actually the residents of this Levant area. So the Israelis came in later.
No, that's what that is what the Israelis are thinking. So therefore, to say this is for the sake of hostages, I think it is just a no. I condemn. We totally condemn. But we totally condemn. Our view is this is wrong. That what Hamas did it. In fact, condemnation of Hamas is not only for this, but condemnation of Hamas is this, that their retribution has come to their people. I mean, because of their unwise action, terrorist action, so much destruction, so much sort of, human losses. The children, the recent reports were so that children of less than 1 year, a huge number of children have died. Their lives have been snuffed out. It is also said there are a lot number of pregnant women. There's no way in the hospital to keep them. They are dying. It means in one life, they're losing two lives. The baby is also being lost. There's also said, sir, that under these circumstances, when they are not supplying the civic amenities which were being supplied by the Israel earlier, this is leading to chaos. People are running away. Where should they run away? I mean, from this side to that side. And they ultimately want you vacate this area. How can a population of 1 lakh plus be asked to migrate, 1 million plus be asked to migrate? So this is all, now it has come to something else. Whether Western powers are helping them indirectly or not is open secret. Because after all, why the resolution, which was UNO resolution? UNO is meant for that. There's Children Welfare Fund, there's a Red Cross, there's humanitarian aid. Nothing has been given. I mean, whatever they are trying to send, that is also being here and there held up. Even their aid, even their supplies to Gaza are being blocked. I am of the view, sir, that this needs condemnation, no doubt. The Hamas action needs condemnation, but this action, this retaliation, to the extent they have gone, also needs condemnation by all right-thinking forces. Civilian population staying in Gaza Strip and West Bank are suffering. Then we must condemn, sir, in the strongest term, the indiscriminate bombing by Israel forces, subsequent to, of course, the Hamas attack. We also condemn, our view is that it should be condemned, that the innocent citizens of the world, maybe this side or that side, I'm just use the word, they are nobody. They are the only pawns in the hand of these politicians who are trying to kill them for certain benefits. Therefore, I am of the view the attack on the refugee camps, for example, recently by Israel, and also killing of innocent children and women is against all humanitarian values. What happened? Ultimately, it is negotiations, sir. What happened?
Correct.
The mighty British Empire in India was thrown out, had to leave. What for? Because we had a non-cooperation movement, we had negotiation and continued negotiation. Although in between there was here and there certain militant movements, militant attacks also on the British, but ultimately the negotiations and the reaction of the world is that after negotiation to come to some conclusion. Therefore, we recommend that Western powers, particularly the USA, to come forward and condemn such attacks by Israeli armed forces. They should use their influence to stop the war against humanity. And I say we should also recommend, or our view is, that strengthening of the UN role should be there. We should not dilute the UN role totally, because by diluting the UN role, what are you doing? You are, tomorrow, something happens, UN will have no role. I mean, their role is being absolutely diluted. Neither the Christianity.
Sir, may I intervene here?
Yeah.
What you said is right, absolutely right. The Western powers and the UN should come into play. And also the Arab League, which is, there are certain countries which are controlling, which are providing financial aid and military aid to the militant groups. And the leaders, they should stop them from making loose comments like both Hezbollah and also the leadership of Hamas to say that we want liquidation of the Israeli settlements. We want to have Palestine as a complete whole. You see, it is both ways, I feel, sir. These leaders also of both Hezbollah and Hamas should be put under control by the Arab League, who is actually supporting them. Because it is both ways, I feel, sir.
Sir, I definitely agree. I am only saying, and I tend to agree with you, neither the Christian faith nor the Islamic faith recommends that. In fact, the attack by Hamas of 7th October has been condemned by some of the Islamic religion leaders. They say it is not in terms of Islam doesn't preach this thing. In fact, Hamas has not acted in consonance with Islam's preaching. It is said. Islam doesn't preach that you go and kill innocent, you brutally murder people, you desecrate you brutally treat the women, you rape them, you bring them openly, and at this sort of this is nowhere there in Islam. So therefore, the Islamic groups, I agree with you, have to act with some sanity. They also should try to persuade them that not to react to that, and ultimately, unless there's a confluence of these views, and you are coming to some conclusion by the UNO coming into it, that is how I think the ceasefire will come about. And I feel, sir, that we can have further dialogue in the next 2-3 series. Janamata, what do you think? What dialogue we could have?
Certain points which come into my mind for the next dialogue is how and why Hamas terrorists assaulted the Israeli settlements, lapses on the part of the Israeli Defense Forces. Is one of the most, active defense force, and they were, as you mentioned, they were caught napping. Extent of human losses and the tragedy attributable to both the sides, and the need to strengthen the UN authority to ensure a ceasefire. This we can have it as a next dialogue, sir, between the two of us, or anyone who comes into being, sir.
I totally agree with you. We have touched basically the core thing as to how it started, etc. But what is happening? We wish it ceases as early as possible. But I agree with you that one by one, or in 1 or 2 dialogue, we'll finish it. I hope by that time, this inhuman, barbaric war comes to an end. Thank you very much, Deepak. It was nice.
The pleasure interacting with you, sir. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you indeed.